Women have been conditioned by society to be, act, and think a certain way. Here at Girls IRL, we encourage women to challenge societal norms and embrace their femininity. With that being said, let's get into this week's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Girls in Real Life podcast. I am your host, Mariah Clayton, and today we are talking about dating. I feel like I've already done an episode on dating, giving you guys tips and advice for how to date in this century. But today we're going to be discussing dating in your late 30s and, having this journey of dating. And I'm super excited because my guest today is Kaity Rodriguez. She is a former Miss New Jersey USA, so a sister of the Sash. You guys know I always have a lot of those who come on the show. And she is also a psychologist or a psychotherapist. You can psychotherapist.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm super excited to have her on the show today. Kaity, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Mariah. I'm excited to get started and share this journey with you guys.
Yes. So the reason that I found out about who you were and this journey that you're on is because one of my followers sent me your story because you were sharing about your journey of going on 100 dates, and she was like, you need to get her on the podcast. And I was like, I'll definitely look into it. And so when I reached out and you said yes, I was like, I'm so excited because I feel like dating is such a big thing these days, and I feel like a lot of people are doing the online dating and like the dating apps, but you are really out here like going out and physically going on dates in person, meeting with people, and I just think it's really cool, and I really just want to hear about your journey and how this came about and where this idea even kind of came from.
So I started the blog 100 Dates in Houston. I just moved to Houston back in April. So we're recording in July. I moved back in April, and that was after a year as a digital nomad, and just still really trying to live my best life, but also find love at the same time. I've never been married. I desire to be married, and it's always been a challenge for me. There's a lot of growing and personal development I needed to do, and so I figured when I got here to Houston, I wanted to start fresh and like really be kind of strategic about how I dated, being that I'm starting in a new city and I'm not moving around anymore. I can really kind of hone in on this goal here. And so, I started dating, went on a couple of apps, and had some friends, that wanted to hook me up with people, and just different, things that came up, different people that came up. And I think it was like my fourth or fifth date here in the month of May. I came across this TikTok, and the TikTok was by this multimillionaire, Alex Hermosi, and he was talking about how success is really based off of volume. And so most people really underestimate the value of volume when it comes to anything that they're trying to do. We live in a microwave society where we think everything is supposed to be quick and easy. And so he gave the example of, like, with him, he didn't reach Apple top 10 with his podcast until he had about 400 podcast episodes. But a lot of people, we post on Instagram every day for, a month or two, and then we're like, why haven't we gone viral? Because we don't understand we need volume in order to be successful. And one thing he said was, you think you've gone on 5 dates and you're frustrated, why can't I find someone? And it's like, well, what if the love of your life is supposed to be date number 500, and you have to go through all of those toads, to find your prince. And so that really got me thinking that I need to shift the way that I think about dating and take more of this is a journey. No one individual is going to be my destination, and I need to expand my mindset in terms of what this process is going to look like.
That's such an interesting concept because you're right. We really do live in this society where we want things like instantaneously, and if we don't see results right out the gate, then we feel like we're a failure and we just give up. And I think it's an interesting concept to apply to the dating world because I feel like a lot of people don't have that mindset when it comes to dating. A lot of people think, oh, my man is going to find me or it'll happen when it happens. But you're saying, like, if you don't actually put in the
Hmm.
work and get a volume of people and actually put yourself out there in order to receive this person who you're looking for, then you're never going to be able to put yourself in the position to where somebody could actually find you because you're not actively seeking it out. You're just waiting for something to happen. And that's not, how we need to live our lives, especially when it comes to things that we want and we desire out of life. So I really like that you kind of
Right.
heard that and applied it to your own life and decided, like, man, I need to flip the switch and, actually apply this volume mindset to my dating life. But I think it's really interesting
Yeah.
that you're from New Jersey. So what in the world made you want to move down south to Houston? I mean, we're literally neighbors now.
Oh, really?
I'm
Where are
in
you?
Louisiana.
Oh,
So
okay. I didn't
Houston is
know
like a
that. Okay.
4-hour
Um,
drive.
yeah. So I grew up between New Jersey and South Carolina, and New Jersey is cold for one
It's
thing.
freezing.
It's cold, and and I've always been a summer girl. I really enjoy the warm weather. And so I've been wanting to leave New Jersey for a while. It's cold, it's expensive, it's home, and there's still a lot of love for it. But I also feel like the world is so big, and for me, it just doesn't feel right to spend all of my time, my whole life, like in one
Yeah.
place. So I said, I want to leave New Jersey. And as I said, last year I was a digital nomad for about a year and a half, so I traveled all over the place. I was in Paris, I was in Italy, I went to Ghana, I went to Houston, I went to
Wow.
LA, different places that I was interested in to see, how it would feel to live there. And I stayed in each place between 1 to 3 months, and so I came here at the end of, when was it? At the end of September of no, at the end of 2021, and I just loved it. I like the price. The cost of living is much less. It's warm all the time. It's extremely hot right now, maybe a little too hot. Uh, the price of it, but also there's a lot of black people that are thriving here, and I really like that about Houston. To be able to see black people and minorities doing well is something that is just it's energy giving, and so I said, I think this feels like home. It felt different than an LA that just didn't feel connected
Yeah.
to me. Maybe it's the Southern hospitality or something, but Houston just felt right, and I'm happy so
Well,
far.
that's good. And yeah, it's definitely the Southern hospitality because I've visited LA and I've visited New York and like people there are just not as warm and inviting and I don't know, it's just a little bit of a
Hmm.
different environment and atmosphere than what I'm used to. I mean, I'm born and raised in Louisiana and so I'm always interested when people move to the South because I know so many people who are like, I want to move to New Jersey and I want to move to New York and I want to move up. And I'm like, it's always just so interesting to hear people's stories
Yeah,
about how they end up down here because sometimes I'm like,
yeah.
why? But most of the time I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
No, I also feel like Houston still has enough city edge for me, and I actually live on the outskirts of Houston, but it has enough city edge. It's the fourth largest city in the country, so there's a lot to offer here, and I don't feel like I'm bored, which can happen to me quite easily. So it felt like a good fit.
Yeah, I think you definitely found the right place. But I wanted to ask you, what was your dating life looking like before you started this 100 dating journey? Like, were you still actively pursuing dates, or did it look a little bit different at that time?
Well, it would be the question would be how far back do you want to go? So, while I was traveling, there were a few people who, some coaches and just people. I remember having a couple of clubhouse chats, and some people were saying that, while you're traveling and you're going to be moving around, just prioritize yourself and focus on yourself. The likelihood of finding someone while you're moving around so much is much lower.
Yeah.
But I had a whole relationship for a brief period while I was traveling. What I found that happens in life is that when you are the woman you want to be, you attract people who are in alignment with that. So I attracted, people who were travelers themselves, nomads themselves. My ex-boyfriend during that time was a pilot, and he found me on Black Travel Feed, the Instagram, Instagram account. They reposted something that I did. He sent me a DM and was like, "Where can I take you on my aircraft?" I was like, "Oh, okay, this is interesting. Let me scroll through the profile here." It was a short relationship, but I had a ton of fun. And prior to that year of traveling, quite honestly, my dating life was a mess. I was kind of a serial monogamous, and I like to say like I had a Cinderella complex or a nice girl syndrome, where I was so busy honoring everyone else, I didn't really understand or apply the concept of just honoring myself and my needs. And so I went through quite a bit of coaching, quite a bit of therapy to get clearer on what I wanted, what I needed, how to set boundaries, how to be assertive, all those things. And even as a therapist myself, we're all a work in
Yes.
progress. So my dating life prior to them was there were long-term relationships, but they were never quite the right fit. And so once I took that pause, COVID came around, went through some coaching, and then started traveling, things started to kind of shift.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I was wondering like how that dynamic would be with traveling so much and then also like wanting to pursue a man. Obviously, like you said, if you are the woman that you want to be, then you're going to attract the person who's going to integrate well into your lifestyle, which I think is a good way to put it because I feel
Right.
like there are so many times where women are just like waiting and waiting and waiting on a man to come to them so that they can
Mhm.
then, be the woman who they quote unquote want to be when a lot of times like
Mhm.
really you need to find yourself first so that the kind of man that you actually want and want to attract will just automatically come to you.
Right, right. And also you'll be able to recognize him when he comes to you because you know who you are and you know what's important to you.
But that's the thing, I think a lot of women don't really take the time to figure out those things that are important to them. I feel like a lot of times when you hear a woman say like
Mhm.
what they want in a man, it's tall, dark, and handsome. It's somebody who's a family man. It's
Mhm.
all very like vague. And I feel like if you
Right.
want to find like your dream man, your ideal person that you want to be with for the rest of your life, like you have to get very specific, like intentionally specific about
Mhm.
what you want and what you're looking for. So that, like you said, when he does arrive, you know that this is someone who is worth your time because I also think that's something
Right.
a lot of women do is we just waste our time on men that we know aren't going to end well, but we're like, "Oh, we're so physically attracted,"
Mhm.
or I can make it work, or I
Mhm.
can, see this going somewhere. Like he's a work in progress, but I can make it happen. And it's like, no, we do not need to fix a man or build a man over here. We need men who are going to
Right.
come into our lives who are already whole, who know what they want, who know what they're going after in life, so that way like you don't have to question your worth and your self-worth as a woman.
Right, absolutely. That's where the self-love, self-worth came in. And I think I definitely loved myself, but I didn't quite understand myself. And when you don't understand yourself, you don't understand what's important to you. It's hard to honor yourself. And so as I learned, this is what I need, and my needs trump anything. My peace of mind trumps any kind of attention or any kind of, you know, physical attraction or anything like that. This is what I have to do in order to honor myself and keep myself safe and secure. I think things have started to shift. If you notice in my blog, it's, my dates are fun. Like, I'm having a good time. It's not to say there aren't ups and downs, but there's no suffering, which I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people tend to suffer in dating and relationships. And if you're suffering, what is the point? Relationships are supposed to bring you value. But I wanted to go back to what you said about knowing what you
Hmm.
want, and this is something that I give my clients in my therapy and coaching practice. It's an exercise of looking up your core values. So like Google core values list. And our values are these kind of ethical guiding principles that we live our lives by, and we all have them. We might not consciously know what they are, but we all have them. And so, you know, when once we know these are my values, we can choose a partner that is either they have the same values or they are in support of those values. So for me, some of my core values are faith, adventure and
Hmm.
fun, kindness, uh, spirituality, and so I can't be with someone who, maybe is an atheist. It's just not in alignment for me. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with that
Right.
person. It's just the not the right fit for me. And so that really is an exercise, the exercise that helps us. It makes decisions much easier. Even when it comes to choosing a job, if you know that your value is family and health, but the job is saying you have to work 80 hours a week, it's probably going to be in, not in alignment with your values, and it can make that decision much easier.
Like you said, once you know what you know that you want, then you're able to kind of weed out the people who don't necessarily fit into the life that you're trying to build for yourself. But I kind of want to talk about your
Right.
experience of navigating these societal pressures of older women dating, because you are in your late 30s, and I feel like a lot of times society puts this
Mhm.
time stamp on women of like, you have to be married by this age, and you have to start having kids by this age, and you have to be doing this by this time. And for women who are older in age and who haven't reached those quote unquote milestones, I feel like it can be a little bit
Mhm.
disheartening. I have an aunt, she's in her 40s. She has no kids. She's never been married. She's a travel nurse and all of these things. And she's had multiple relationships that she's hoped would work out, but
Mhm.
just haven't worked out. And my Nana, we love her to death, but she's always asking my aunt, like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to give me some grandkids? Even though she has like 20 grandkids already. But those societal pressures, even still, like having that come from your inner circle, having these people question you about when it's going to happen for you, how does that make you feel, and how do you navigate those people in your life?
So honestly, in my personal life, people who are close to me don't really ask me that. My parents, thank God, never put any pressure on me. They're kind of like, enjoy the life that you have, and that pressure never helps. It just, if I could make it happen, I would make it happen. But you asking me about it and telling me I need to isn't going to help. And so, fortunately, my parents have never put that kind of pressure on me, and the people who are around me have never done that. But there definitely are those stigmas and messages in society, in social media. And it really requires a soundness of mind. And you first knowing who you are, going back to that, and then knowing whose opinion is important to you. So even when it comes to this blog, 100 Dates in Houston, there are people who think that I am doing this just to get content. There are men who say, she's for the streets, 100 dates, like, and who know nothing about how I'm trying to do it or who I am. But they all come with their own projections as to who you are and what you should be doing. And if you take in everyone's opinion, uh, and believe it versus what you know in your core, then you're going to be trying to twist yourself into pretzels to fit everybody's thoughts and expectations, and that never works. And so it's really about saying, this is the small box of people whose opinions actually matter to me. And those are like your advisors, your closest family members, friends, mentors. Everybody else, you really have to work towards tuning out.
Yeah, I think that's probably the number one thing that my aunt has learned how to do, because we have a lot of conversations. I talk to her about any and everything. She's literally like the cool auntie, and she always just says like,
Mm-hmm.
of course I want to get married. Of course I want to have kids. Of course, like that's what I want for myself. But she says, I'm not going to settle in order to just make my mom happy, or in order to just make the people around me stop asking me questions. Like I know what I want and I know what I
Right.
deserve out of a man. And just because I feel these
Mm-hmm.
pressures coming on to me and having people question me, that doesn't mean that I have to give in to that pressure. That doesn't mean that I have to just go out here and find the first man who's willing to put a ring on it. I'm still allowed to have
Right.
my standards and to uphold those standards until somebody good enough comes along to where I feel comfortable to take that next step with someone. So that's something that she's definitely taught me
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the year of 2023, I think the landscape and the way relationships are happening is changing, simply because of women being able to work and have our own money and things like that. And so in this day and age, it makes more sense for a woman to be single than to be miserably in a relationship, right? Because, maybe 50 to 100 years ago, it made more sense. Okay, you're going to be miserable in this relationship, but at least you'll have a roof over your head and you'll have a bank account and you'll have food in your fridge and whatnot. But now that's not the case. And so because I can, I have the ability to take care of myself financially, to whatever degree that is, and provide myself certain experiences, I need you to only add to that. And so if you're not able to add, joy or peace or even another level of security or whatever it is, then I'm better off by myself. And I think a lot of people, a lot of men aren't, they haven't caught up to that. They don't quite
Yeah.
get that just yet. I think that people are best in relationships, and research will tell you that the happiest people are happily married, but the unhappiest people are unhappily married, and single people fall somewhere in the middle. So I'd rather be single until I find that right person than to be married just to be married and be
Yeah,
miserable.
because I mean the divorce rate is what, like over 50% in the United States? Like
Hmm.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Right. And I think, marriage, while I don't think it has to be grueling work, I think it's challenging enough to go through life's issues with the right person. Like, right, like life is going to throw all kinds of things at you yourself. You know this, right? But imagine trying to go through life with the wrong
Yeah.
person. Like,
It just
no.
wouldn't make anything better.
Right, right, exactly. So no need. So.
I want to kind of talk about your dates because I did read your blog and you mentioned that you're doing these dates in hopes of, obviously finding the love of your life, and you're doing this high volume of men because even if it takes, if you reach that person on your fifth date, then like yay, great, but if not, then you still have
Mhm,
kind of like this hope. And there was a line that you said
mhm.
that I forgot what it said, but it was something about hopelessness and like one gives you hopelessness and one gives you hopefulness. So yeah, can you
Hopefulness.
kind of talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, so if let's say I go out with date number 10 and it falls flat, and then I start to think, maybe this isn't meant to happen. Why wasn't he my guy? Right? That's going to make me feel like hopeless. Like, this is never going to happen. I've been out with, 5, 10 guys already. It's just not going to meant to be. That thought of like this person had to be the one creates a sense of hopelessness. But if I go out with date number 10 and I know, I'm working towards 100 here, or whatever the number needs to be, and I have 90 more chances to get it right, that's going to help me to feel more hopeful. And that's the difference between like a destination mindset versus a journey
Yeah.
mindset. I know this is just one step along the way to getting to what I ultimately want in the end. And another concept behind that journey mindset is that who I become in the process is going to be the woman who I need to be in order to be not just find a guy, but sustain a marriage, right? So like I'm not married, you tell me. When you're married, right, you
Girl, I'm not married
you have
either.
to be resilient. Oh, you're not married? I thought you were married. Okay, well, no.
No, I just got a
It's my
baby out of
bad.
wedlock. You
Well,
know, you know how it goes. I got a baby daddy.
okay.
No, I'm kidding. I love you, Justin. Okay.
But to sustain any kind of healthy relationship, healthy partnership, right? You can't just throw in the towel as soon as things don't work out, right? You have to be resilient. You have to be willing. You have to have your mind right. You have to have emotional management. Dating requires emotional
Yeah.
management, right? Like you can't just pop off or want to throw in the towel, give up, say whatever you want to say when things don't go right. And so all of these things that I'm becoming through this process will help me with the next phase of the process, of the journey, of the goal.
I like that, the destination versus a journey mindset, because I feel like as a society,
Mhm.
people are so focused on like reaching the goal that they forget about enjoying the process and like going through the process and being present in the process. A lot of times we're just like
Mhm.
tunnel vision, fast forwarding through life and forgetting about all of these things that are going on outside of our peripheral vision because we're not turning to look and see like and enjoy all the things that are happening around us because we're so focused on like this is the destination, this is where I got to go, I got to get there as quickly as possible, and you really forget about how beautiful the journey actually is. And so you're counting yourself out of all of these other experiences that you could be having along the way because you're so focused to getting way down there.
Right, right, absolutely. Like I was just thinking the other day, as I'm going on these dates, this is the time that when I find my person, I will be, I will say, you know, this is what my dating life. I remember when I was out there going on all these dates, and you know, this is part of my life. This is part of my story, right? And so I can take my time and enjoy this time. You know, I had one guy take me here and one guy take me there, and it was fun. You know, I can enjoy this phase because it won't be, this won't be the story always prayerfully. It's just one leg in the journey, and I can enjoy
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So, what is something like memorable that's happened on one of these dates, or what has been like your favorite date that you've been on so far?
So I would say, okay, this one hasn't been published yet, so you guys get a little teaser. But recently, this was a more recent date. I had a gentleman come from out of town for a date, and it was like a couple. There were a couple of parts to it, and so he flew in. We had breakfast, and then that evening we went to a Korean barbecue spot, which was a different kind of dining experience. But also that morning we went to the Houston, was it Museum of Natural History or Natural Science? Yeah, the Houston Museum of Natural Science. And you know, while some people would be like, that's, I enjoyed it because we got this ticket to like one of their special exhibits called, it's a butterfly house.
Mm-hmm.
And as a kid, I always loved butterflies and chasing butterflies. And so we went into the butterfly house, and there was like a 50-foot waterfall and all these butterflies flying around, and it was just magical. And then we were able to see like caterpillars hatching out of their cocoons and things. And so we were kind of geeks about it, and it was very cute. And I'm an intellectual, so I enjoyed just the whole science behind it, and he was too. So that was a lot of fun. But then the next day, we kind of did part two, and I had told him that that Saturday morning I had a community service project. And so he's like, oh, well, can I come and join you? I need to finish up some hours for this thing that I did. And we did a community service date together with Bread of Life, handing out food. We fed over, I think, 400 families. And the fact that he was willing to do that, you know, that tells me something about
Yeah.
him, right? Like, I want someone who's generous and kind. And the fact that he asked to come along to do that with me, that's like, that's a value for
That's
me.
a green
And so we did that, and I enjoyed it.
flag.
Yes, green flag. So those were probably my best dates so far, I
Oh,
think.
I love that. That's so cute. While we're on the subject of flags, I kind of want to talk about like what are some of your red flags? Like you go on a date and if
Mm.
he does X, Y, and Z, it's like an immediate no thank you.
There haven't been any that are immediate, that have been immediate no thank yous here so far. Um, but I think that I'm very sensitive to emotional unavailability. And so if someone is not willing to ask you questions about yourself or just say how they feel about certain things, if they're not open to certain questions, you know, and not every question, you're not going to ask them about their deepest, darkest childhood secrets. But I remember there was one man who I just published, you know, a post about date number 4, the beard. When there's one question that I always ask men, just because it's fun, but it also tells you a bit about the man and kind of who he is. So there's this concept of masculine archetypes. And archetypes are basically how men throughout history and mythology and biblically kind of showed up, like what kind of energy they bring. And so the idea is that every man is dominated either by king, warrior, lover, or magician energy. And the most integrated men, the most well-rounded, evolved men kind of have a little bit of all
Mm-hmm.
four, right? Like when we think about what we want somebody who can love but can also fight and can also create
Yeah.
things and like all that. We want it all. So those are like the gems that, are few and far between. But I like to ask men, like, which one are you? Which one do you feel, describes you the most? And this particular guy said he wasn't going to answer the question. And that just, yeah. He's like, I'm not going to answer that because I don't want to put myself in a box, right? So even that response told me about him. What did it tell me? It told me he was closed, right? He could have said, oh, it's hard for me to choose because I feel like I'm all of them and I'm this because this and that because that. Or, I don't, but the closed offness of it just was a turn off to me. I did give him another, you all would see in the blog, I went a second round to confirm what I already knew, but I didn't feel that he was emotionally available. And that to me, that's kind of a deal breaker for me because I need you to be open. It sends me into overthinking and I'm trying to figure out like, why are you not opening up and whatnot? And so that's a no-go.
He's like, I'm not answering this question. Like, sir, it's
Yeah,
just
like
have
why?
fun. Like, just answer it.
Right, right. I'm not asking you about, childhood trauma, so I didn't get
In
it.
your experience with like dating and everything, how long would you say it takes for you to kind of build a deep emotional connection? Does it take just like a few conversations? Does it take a few months? And with that,
Hmm.
I guess, how do you open yourself up emotionally to so many different people if you're not sure of like
Hmm.
how far it's going to go, if that makes sense?
So I can definitely answer the second question. So my background is Christian, and so I have a little prayer wall where I'm praying for certain things that are important to me, and for people and causes and all those things that are important. And so when it comes to my personal prayer list, I ask God to help me to have both an open heart as well as a sound mind in order to be able to date. And I feel like you have to have both. In order to date, you need to be able to be open and let people in, because if not, you're not emotionally available and you're guarded and you're trying to protect yourself all the time, and you're being like that guy that I just mentioned, which doesn't work for intimate relationships. But at the same time, you have to have a sound mind so that you can catch the red flags, so that you're you see on paper like our values aren't in alignment, right? And be able to know the difference between the two. And so my thing is, I just told a friend recently, I can like you but also leave you at the same time. I can be open and say like, I like you as a person, and you make me laugh, or you triggered this emotion in me, and that's all good. But because I know myself and I value my peace and my well-being, I can also say you're not a fit for me at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. And so having that balance of consciously knowing what will and won't work, as long as you pay attention to yourself as a woman, I say our intuition is our superpower. And if we pay attention to our intuition, we don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to get hurt? Like, we might be disappointed, but if I am constantly checking in with myself, I'm not going to allow myself to stick around for very long for something that doesn't work, because I'm saying this thing is not good for me. This is hurtful to me, so I need to let it go. But I think, you can be open and still have good judgment at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what turns a lot of women off from just dating, is that
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to open up their emotions to someone. And I feel like a lot of women a lot of times say, I don't want to start over. Like, I don't want to learn about his favorite color. I don't want to like tell him about like, my high school experience.
Yeah.
And, it's like you pour so much of yourself and so much of your emotions into a person to where if it doesn't work
Mm-hmm.
out, it's almost like, damn, what was it for? Like, why did I even give
Right.
my time, waste my
Right.
energy, and now I have to try and do it all over again? And so that's where you get women who are like closed off and who have a hard heart and like don't want to open themselves up again because they did that. And when they did, it backfired on them. So that's why I asked, because I
Right.
just wanted
Right.
to know like how you kind of stay motivated to continue to open yourself up
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, because it can be
Yeah.
hard doing that.
Well, I'll also say too, there's two other things that I would add to that. Is one, just the idea of 100 dates is it's a bit of a protection, again, mentally. I know that most guys I meet will not be the one. That's just a fact. Like, I only need one, and most will not be that person. And so I don't get married in my mind to a guy right away. We tend to do that as women. The minute we meet them, it's like we're seeing the wedding bells and planning and all of that, but you don't even know this
Yeah.
person. So get to know them, and you can totally like them, but you're still kind of investigating and learning about them in the process. And so that idea that most will not be that person and I'm going to continue to get to know them, I can be open and share, but in the back of my mind, I know, I have to pace myself. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, I think women also tend to equate being emotionally invested and open to giving and performing. And so, like, if I like you and I'm open to you, then I'm going to do all these things, even if we're not in a relationship yet, right? So there's a coach that I work with. She's a wonderful coach, Taurus Sense. You can find her on Instagram. She talks about how you should only give when you're dating enough to where you would feel comfortable if he were to ghost you and never speak to you again, right? So if you're thinking about, should I do this thing for this person, this guy, he's asking me to fly out to meet him here. Personally, I'm not really comfortable with spending money on flights to go see guys. That's just my own personal thing. If you want to fly me out, cool.
Right.
But like, I'm not, because if tomorrow you decided you wanted to go with some other woman or whatever, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And so I'm not going to overgive until I feel certain and secure about where we stand. Maybe once we're together, or we're exclusive, it's official. But while we're dating, me cooking all the meals and spending all the money and ruling everyone else out, like that, the relationship, that's not matching where the relationship is right now, right? We're just getting to know each other. So I think women have to keep that in mind, because when that does happen and things don't work out, there's resentment, because you've overgiven. Not only have you opened yourself emotionally, but you've given all these things, and it could be sex that you've given, whatever it is of value to you, and that's why you feel so broken when it doesn't work out.
I saw a video on TikTok. This girl was talking about how, like, don't be a wife to a boyfriend, or even just don't be a wife to someone who you're casually dating, because I feel like a lot of
Right.
times men are like, prove to me that you deserve to be married. Prove to me that, like, I should wife you up. And
Mm-hmm.
so women get in this mindset
Right.
of like, oh, I have to show him I can clean. I have to show him I can cook. I have to show him that I'm good in bed. I have to show him all these different sides of myself, right? And it's like they just want
Right.
their cake and eat it too. Like, they don't want to put in the work. They just
Right.
want somebody to come in and make their life easier for a short amount of time. And if they just want to do away with that,
Right.
then it's no hurt to them, but it's all hurt on the woman, because you've given, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
you've given so much of yourself to this person who literally, in lack of a better word, just used you. Like, just used you for the time being, and just
Mm-hmm.
allowed you to
Mm-hmm.
come in and make his life ultimately better and do his laundry and make his bed and all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you are getting nothing out of it as the woman, because you're trying to prove yourself to a man who literally hasn't proven himself to you, girl.
Exactly, exactly. And this is not, I don't have my therapist hat on in this conversation, so just keep that in mind. But I think that truthfully, most men, right? We don't want to generalize, but most men, most people, you value the challenge, right? If I had to work hard for it, then it means so much more to me. I think a lot of women believe that if they're just agreeable and they're nice and they do what's expected and whatnot, that's going to get them the kind of guy they want. But truthfully, men need to, the woman that he chooses to spend his life with is for I think the kind of men that we would want, the kind of men your listeners would want. He wants to respect you, right? He wants to know that, he can trust you. He wants to know that, you are just a certain type of woman, not just a woman who can cook and
Yeah.
clean, but that she's, that she's a certain kind of woman. She has been a challenge in a good way, right? Like you're not trying to start drama and trouble, but that this was someone that I had to prove myself to be, right? And as a woman on the other end, you're more likely to get the guy that is going to treat you well and is going to really partner with you when you haven't overgiven so much from the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. We're going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, but I want to ask you, like, going on all these dates and even just going throughout your life before you even started this journey, what is like one of the biggest lessons that you've learned, one, about yourself, and then two, about allowing yourself to open yourself up to the possibility of meeting someone? If that makes sense. I don't know if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
So you said, what about myself? I mean, I've learned so much about myself throughout this process, throughout just my dating journey. I've learned one. I mean, this is might sound very generic, but I've learned that I can do hard things and that I can grow into the woman that I want to be. Right. So recently, I had a guy tell me that he was like, "You're a real grown woman," and well, I was like, obviously, like I'm in my late 30s, yes, but from he was talking about from a mental standpoint, there's a lot of adult women who just they don't have adult skills, like adult woman skills, like I said, communication, emotion management, assertiveness, empowerment. And he told me like you are empowered to speak up for yourself, but also, when you communicate with me, you speak up for yourself in a way that doesn't emasculate me. And that's a beautiful thing. And that wasn't always the case for me. I couldn't always do that. But I grew into the woman that I wanted to become. And that's hard sometimes. When we want to do things, sometimes they are
Yeah.
hard things that we want to do in order to attain our goals. But that doesn't mean we can't get there. Maybe we're not there at the moment, but we can do the hard thing and grow into that person. So I've learned that about myself. I used to say, maybe it's just not meant to be, or it's just not meant for me because I didn't have the skill or the ability just yet, but I can grow into it. So I think that's something. And then you said, I forget what the second
We
question
just
was.
gonna scratch it because I don't even think I made a lick of sense. I was
Okay.
like, I don't even know what I'm saying at this point.
Okay.
But no, I love what you said, and I feel like I admire you so much because I feel like you've put in the work. Like you've done the coaching and you've gone to therapy sessions and looked internally and you've figured out like who you are as a person, what your worth is, and you're not settling, and you're able to put up boundaries and you're able to be assertive when you want to be assertive, and you're able to live this life as a strong, beautiful, confident woman because you know that that's internally what you are. Like you don't second guess that at all. So I just think very highly of you for that sense. But I kind of want to ask you, what
Thank you.
is your advice for any other woman who's in her 30s or even in her late 20s? I mean, I feel like there's so many ages in life where women feel like their life is over. I'm never going to find the love of my life. Like, this is just pointless. What is your advice for that woman who is yearning for that relationship, and how can you encourage her?
Oh, I would say first and foremost, your relationship with yourself is the most important one. I'm a big fan of Sex in the City, and she ends the final episode saying like the most exciting, rewarding, and challenging relationship is the one you will have with yourself. And if you can find someone who loves the you that you love, well, that's just fabulous. I just love it. But I think that's the truth. Like our relationships with ourselves is first. And so this is not to say that you have to love yourself first before you find love and blah blah blah, but that really needs to be a focal point as you go throughout life, but also particularly if you're dating and looking for the love of your life. Start with, how can I show up for myself more? How can I love myself more? That might just mean learning to set more boundaries, learning to communicate better. It could mean going to therapy. It could mean a lot of different things, but you have to turn the focus of your dating journey towards you. Like you are the center of that
Yeah.
universe. And the man comes second, right? He comes second. And then then I think that will transform, how things work out.
Yeah.
So I would start with
I
that.
like that because I feel like so many times we put the focal point on the man and like finding the man when really, like you said, in your dating
Mhm.
experience, like you are the focal point. Like you are the person who gets the ability to choose like who you want to add into your life. And I think that's something so beautiful as women that we kind of take for granted a little bit. You know, we have the ability to say no to a man. We have the ability to like pick and choose
Mhm.
who we're going to allow to spend the rest of our lives with. You know, that's why men ask us to marry them because like they know that we are the prize. We are the thing that's going to make their life exponentially better. And I think that if we remember that as women,
Mhm.
like we are the prize, we are the thing that's meant to be won, then you're able to not have so much focus on I got to find this man, I got to find this man. Like I'm good with myself when a man comes to find me, and if I want
Mhm.
to allow him into my life, into my space, then I can and I will. But until that happens, then I'm going to continue to work on myself and love myself and know that I'm still worthy of love, even though it hasn't happened for me yet.
Right. And loving yourself and working on yourself can just mean doing the things that make you happy, right? Like, if you want to date, do you know the things that make you happy? When you're talking about going to find guys, are you just going to sports bars because guys are going to be there, or can you go do something you love and maybe the guy that is for you will participate
Yes.
in that thing? Like I love to salsa dance, so I go dancing on a regular basis. Not to find men, but occasionally it does happen because that's what makes me happy.
Oh, I love that. Okay, we're gonna end on that note. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation was just so much needed, even for me, and I'm in a relationship. I just think that this is going to help so many women out there. You guys, all of Katie's information is going to be in the description of the podcast, the link to her blog if you guys want to keep up with all of her dates, her social media, all the things. Katie, was there anything that you wanted to say before I let you leave?
No, just thank you for having me. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I hope your listeners gain something. And like you said, you can follow me 100datesinhouston.com.
Yes. Well, girlies, I hope y'all have a great Monday and a great week, and I'll talk to y'all in my next episode. Bye.